The natural world is filled with sound. But so far, we've been hearing only part of it. Some animals call even before they enter the world. Others use sound to communicate with their siblings. Or call to their parents. Using the most advanced audio technology, we can listen to them all. To reveal how baby animals use sound to stay alive, in a world where the odds are stacked against them. The most perilous time in an animal's life is at its very beginning. These little cygnets are just 3 days old. And at this stage of their lives, and for some months to come, they are unable to fly. As a consequence, they're easy prey for a gull or a fox. But there's just one thing that is of extreme importance to their survival, and that is sound. The Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. This is the home of a kind of burrowing mongoose, meerkats. This season's pups are taking their first steps in the world outside their family's home. In time, they will get to know the sounds of everything that's going on around them. But just now, what they want is breakfast. And to get it, they must make themselves heard. The smallest pup has an injured foot, and keeping up with the rest is a struggle. Once they emerge, meerkat pups need more food than their own parents can provide, so they must persuade other adults to feed them. But in this harsh country, food isn't easy to find. Temperatures can reach over 45 degrees Celsius, and most food is hidden underground. So a meerkat's life is dominated by digging. They may have to shift their entire body weight in sand to find just one mouthful to eat. After all this hard work, the helpers can be more interested in feeding themselves than the pups. So the youngsters beg continuously. The moment food is found, each pup switches to a high-pitched begging call in an attempt to ensure that it, and not its siblings, gets the mouthful. And those who make this begging call more intensely get the food. The biggest pup is successful, and the smallest misses out again. and again. Staying close to an adult increases the chances of being heard and being fed. But this brings its own hazards. Finally, the small one does get a mouthful. But it takes a long time to eat it. And when he looks up, everyone else has gone. If there's one thing more important to a meerkat than food, it's family. Without their guidance, he wouldn't last for long in this intense heat. He calls for help. Making such a noise, however, has risks. At last, an adult hears him. But the heat and exhaustion have taken their toll. It may be too late. His sister encourages him to get back on his feet. Once again, the little meerkat has been saved by sound. As the pups grow, they will face many new challenges, including predators. Sound will be invaluable to help them navigate these dangers. But some baby animals use sound before they even enter the world. The swamps of South America. There is danger everywhere. One vigilant mother here is on guard. A caiman. Over 2 meters long and weighing around 60 kilograms, she lives by ambushing prey in these murky waters. On the bank, close to the river, there is a great mound. It's her nest. And inside, there are her eggs. 30 or so of them. Her nest guarding duties, however, are coming to an end. The young, still within the eggs, are approaching one of the most dangerous moments they will ever face. And they are squeaking. Their chances of survival will depend on these noises. We have a special camera with 60 super-sensitive microphones which can show us which squeak is coming from which egg. The first starts to hatch. But the youngsters would stand a much better chance of survival if they all hatched simultaneously. So they call to one another to indicate how close they are to emerging. It succeeds in struggling free from the egg. But it has a problem. The nest that once kept them all safe now keeps them trapped. The calls of the emerged now encourage the others to break out of their eggs. But they still can't get out of the nest without help. Individually, they can barely be heard. But together, they become loud enough for their mother to hear them. She has been waiting for these sounds for nearly 70 days. And she goes into action. One by one, she picks her hatchlings up and takes them down to the water. The last to hatch are sometimes forgotten. But with the nest fully opened, they can now get out. But they have no idea where their mother is. Once again, they're saved by sound. They can recognize the voices of their siblings and follow the sound of the water, where their mother will guard them all. Sound has guided them on the first and most hazardous journey of their lives. The sounds of an English spring. For many of the animals that live here, they carry important messages. This bee has just discovered that the flowers are now producing nectar. She gathers all she can, and then flies back with the good news. Her colony has been inactive during the cold months. But now the time has come for action. The forager conveys her news by repeatedly thumping her abdomen on the comb. Bees, like many insects, don't have ears, so they can't hear airborne sounds. But they can feel the vibrations she makes on the comb. Detecting it with the sense organs in their legs. And Those that are still asleep are alerted by her signal that drums directly into their body. Eventually, the workers are roused into action. Within days, the hive's depleted stores are restocked with nectar and pollen. Food that will fuel the production of the next generation of bees. When a colony has grown so much that it contains around 40,000 individuals, it prepares to swarm. But a new swarm will need a queen, and the old queen has already left. There are several contenders for the role who are developing in particularly large cells. Tiny, super-sensitive microphones enable us to hear an extraordinary call like the quacking of a duck. The unhatched queens are signaling that they're ready to emerge. The workers detect the vibrations of these calls, and in response, they start to release the first queen. If two queens are released at the same time, they will fight one another to the death. So she does her best to make sure that her rivals remain in their cells. She does that by making a sound beekeepers call a toot. Slowed down 1,000 times and using new software that converts vibration to color, we can see how she creates this call. The vibrations travel down her legs, across the comb, and are detected by the legs of the workers. As she toots, the whole colony, for a few seconds, stops moving in recognition that a new queen has ascended the throne. Each toot is answered by a chorus of quacks from the rival queens, who are still within their cells and eager to emerge. But as long as the new queen continues tooting, the workers will not release her rivals. The crowned queen toots repeatedly until, after a few days, she prepares to depart with half of the workers in a swarm. The sounds in the hive become increasingly intense until finally the swarm leaves the nest. They reassemble on a nearby branch, and a new colony will soon be established. Many animals, when they first appear, rely on their parents for everything they need and use sound to keep in touch with them. "20,000 flamingos breeding off the Yucatan coast in Mexico. The noise here is deafening. The chicks, nonetheless, are able to exchange intimate sounds with their parents. This one has only just hatched. The colony provides protection for its members, but living in such a huge crowd is nonetheless hazardous. And the chick's very survival depends on its ability to recognize the voices of its parents. So it must learn to do so quickly, because within 10 days of hatching, it and its parents will leave the nest. The call of each flamingo is unique. It's a kind of vocal fingerprint. How the chick manages in such a din to memorize and pick out the calls of its parents is unimaginable. But it does so. This one is taking its first steps out of the nest. But it's not really ready for the wider world. Eventually, it becomes a little braver. But now it has a new problem. It's growing fast, and both it and its parents need food. To get it, the adults must leave the colony and their chick. The chick cannot fly and will be unable to do so for another 3 months. So until then, it's very vulnerable. There are hundreds of youngsters with the same problem. The young gather together in an enormous creche. There's safety in numbers. A few adults have stayed behind to keep the creche together. The others eventually return. But now, each must recognize its own chick among the densely packed flock of thousands. Amazingly, each family trio, male, female and chick, are able to recognize one another's voices. Distinguishing individual calls among this deafening chorus must be difficult. And this male can't find his chick. Adults aren't the only ones who are searching. A crocodile is lurking nearby. The chick calls, but it can't hear its father's reply. The crocodile attacks. It failed to grab a chick, but it did create dangerous confusion in the flock. The chick has become separated from the others and seems to be lost. It begs for food from any individual that passes. Its father, in another part of the flock, keeps calling. But the chick is too far away to hear him. And this is how many chicks meet their end. But not this one. It keeps calling. And from across the lagoon, its father replies. The unique sound of the chick's voice has been recognized by its father, and the two at last are reunited. As young animals grow, they learn to recognize oncoming dangers and become big enough for their voices to sound an alarm. A wolf pack in Ontario, Canada. This communal howl binds the pack together and registers their ownership of a territory. With only around 500 of these eastern wolves left, this heart-stopping sound is now extremely rare. But this chorus has some new voices. It's August, and the pups are joining in. These youngsters, however, create a problem. One that could endanger them all. Now, in summer, the days are over 14 hours long. So the wolves have to hunt in the light. The pups are too big to stay in the den, but too inexperienced to join in the hunt. So the adults leave them in an open area, a rendezvous site. Its very openness makes it a great place for play. But this is a particularly dangerous time in their lives. Half of them won't live beyond their first year. What happens here and now will determine whether these will do so. Two of the youngsters know exactly where they're supposed to stay, but their sister can't resist exploring. Distracted, she doesn't notice that a black bear is approaching. This is one of the few animals that will kill a wolf pup. The wandering youngster seems unaware of the danger. But her brothers are. They sound the alarm. Alerted, the wandering pup spots the bear. Now, the lives of all three pups are at risk. But as the bear moves in, she hears a different call. It's her own cub, and he needs his mother. It's been a lucky escape for the pups, but they're not yet in the clear. The pups' howls are shorter and higher pitched than those of the adults, but they can still be heard many miles away. And they are answered. The sound has alerted an adult wolf. It's their father. He's returned with food for the pups. As dusk falls, the pack celebrates with a reunion chorus. Their voices have been crucial in keeping the pack together. But many animals issue warning calls that contain far more complex information. The meerkats, as they grow, learn how to find their own meals. And they're discovering how to avoid becoming someone else's. The desert is full of hungry mouths. And meerkats are small and obviously edible. Their defense is neither armor nor weapon. Instead, they use sound, a complicated system of alarms. These calls are not just generalized alerts. This one warns of a flying predator. And those hearing it look up and scan the sky. Danger on the ground is indicated by a different call. Best to look around. Snakes are identified by a third signal. A call from the lookout summons others to come and help drive it away. Meerkat warnings are so detailed that they can be a bit confusing for youngsters. So the best thing is to do what everybody else is doing. The calls also carry other information, such as how fast the predator is approaching. And there is one call which should never be ignored. This is the high urgency call, a warning of immediate danger. Not to react to this could be disastrous. So, when you hear this call, run for your life. Sounds in the open air are important for many animals. But there is another world of sound with which we are far less familiar. We can't hear very well underwater because our ears are shaped to work in the air. But there is a way in which we can eavesdrop on this underwater world by using a special kind of underwater microphone called a hydrophone. I don't know exactly what's making those noises. It's probably some small invertebrates or maybe a small fish. We've known for some time that quite a lot of fish produce sounds. It's only recently, however, that scientists have discovered just how widespread that ability is. The ocean covers around 70% of our planet's surface. And sound also plays a crucial role in the lives of many of the animals that live in it. coral reefs are surprisingly noisy places. Many of these sounds are made by fish. Here too, sound can be important from the very beginning of an animal's life. Without it, one of the most strikingly coloured fish on the reef would never find its way home. It's just days before a full moon, and this female clownfish is about to lay her eggs. Clownfish live in small communities, each based around a particularly large anemone. In this busy colony, only 2 adults will reproduce. The largest, the dominant female, and her partner, the next in size, the dominant male. There's a strict hierarchy, one that's based on size but policed by sound. Her larger body enables her to make the deepest sound by snapping her teeth together to produce pops and pulses. The male signals his subordinate status by quivering his head and producing a purring noise. And everyone around the anemone knows that she is the boss. At full moon, she will be ready to lay eggs. So the group needs to find a firm surface for them. A coconut shell, brought in by the currents, would be ideal. But it needs to be moved into the right position. She indicates her needs with a low-pitched grunt, and the juveniles in the colony comply by shaking their heads. Working together, they maneuver the coconut shell into position. Teamwork takes a lot of coordination and a lot of grunting and jaw grinding. Next, the stage needs to be prepared. And at last, the moment arrives. She lays her eggs in neat lines. The male then makes his contribution, fertilizing the eggs. Now he takes charge. For the next 7 days, he will fan and clean the eggs as they develop. Three more days, and the embryos begin to respond to the sounds around them. The sounds that they hear now could play a critical role in the next stage of their lives. But a different sort of noise is already threatening their survival. The male reacts to the noise of a boat as he would to a predator. If If there is constant motor traffic, he spends more time hiding and less tending the eggs, so they're more vulnerable to predators and disease. The noise around these reefs has increased dramatically in recent decades, and that has affected the lives of the fish living here. But the clownfish father has managed to keep his young healthy, and a week later they begin to change. The plankton-sized fry wriggle free and are then swept away from the reef by ocean currents. For 10 days, the larval fish drift out in the open ocean. By the time that each is about the size of a grain of rice, they're strong enough to swim against the current. And they need to find their way back to a reef. The key to their homecoming is sound. Underwater, the sounds of a reef can be heard for many miles around. The tiny young clownfish can hear this noise and swim towards it. They can even judge the health of a reef by its sound. The noisier it is, the more vigorous it is. The anemone will provide him with shelter and sanctuary for the rest of his life. Sound has brought him home. For these fish, and for many other baby animals, sound is crucial for launching themselves into the world and learning what they need to stay safe and to thrive. For them, sound is survival. Biologist Mark Meakin became fascinated by coral reefs more than 30 years ago.
Coral reefs, they're these incredible habitats, and I've always been struck by their diversity and their just incredible beauty.
Today, he is fighting to save these reefs from the ravages of climate change. This is Australia's Ningaloo Reef that stretches along the country's western coast. But over decades of research, Mark discovered something else. That coral reefs are full of sound. A hunch about the significance of this inspired him to try and find a way to use this sound to save coral reefs.
If we could hear underwater, we'd hear this cacophony of hoots and yowls, really strange screams made by fish. And these little fish may actually be helping the coral to grow. Basically by sheltering in the coral, pooping in the coral, fertilizing the coral. A healthy reef is really very noisy.
This sound is key. After hatching, reef fish are swept out to sea. When they return, they use these healthy sounds to choose the reef that will be their home.
And this was just a wow moment. We suddenly thought we can actually use this to help the reef.
The result is a multi-million-dollar project with one goal: to discover if sound can also help save a dying reef. first step is to collect 3.5 tons of coral debris. It's alive and extremely vulnerable. Mark's team build 60 experimental reefs. Underwater speakers are guided to some of these and turned on. It's their job to attract fish by playing the sounds of a healthy reef. The results will be compared to experimental reefs without speakers. At Ningaloo, it's a new moon. Tonight, the reef fish are coming home. At the experimental sites, speakers are on, broadcasting the sounds of a healthy reef.
Okay, get ready, Daphne.
Yeah.
They are laying out light traps and assessing if the speakers are attracting fish to the experimental reefs with sound versus ones without. And they are.
We actually got the fish to come. They arrived in big numbers on the reefs.
Mark's team have been photographing these reefs for 12 months. Now they're going to see if the fish have helped the coral to grow again.
So on the left here, we've got our patch reef model from 1 year ago, and on the right-hand side, our patch reef model from a couple of days ago. And you can see fairly obviously already there's been a fair bit of growth over the year.
Wow.
This one's roughly 20 centimetres across, maximum diameter, and the same colony, a year later, it's almost 40.
40, so we've doubled in size.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Wow. Coral reefs today are in such a state that we're beyond shouting it to everybody that it's bad. We have to move into doing something about it.
The sound made by fish might just be a vital tool to help scientists save coral reefs around the globe.